Moin aus Mainz and welcome back to another Wingfoil Experience podcast. And first and foremost, guys, I'm super sorry that it took so long to get this new podcast episode out there. I was swamped with work and it was really hard for me to make the time for the podcast. But anyway, no excuses. I'm back on it and there will be more episodes. I promise you guys. So today we have Jelle Stoop back here and he is talking about dog starts specifically. I want to learn a dog start. I would love to be able to do dog starts. I tried it a couple of times with different boards, different foils, different techniques, and it was super hard for me. And I really felt like this is unbelievably hard. Jelle told me it's actually hard, but it's easier as it looks if you have the right technique and the right resources at your hand. And a couple of mistakes that I did, Jelle already pointed out that they are completely wrong. For instance, jumping on the board, he said you have to step on the board. Or second, I wanted to have my front foot first on the board. He said opposite, take the back foot first. Stuff like that. So that was super interesting. If you want to learn dog starts, check this episode out and have fun with Jelle Stoop. So welcome to another Wingfoil Experience podcast. Today we have a special guest. It's a second appearance of Jelle Stoop from Brouwersdam. Hey Jelle, how are you?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
Yeah, we just pre-discussed a little bit that we're both somewhere between a lot of projects, and one of your big project has been the foilschool Netherlands. You have been on the podcast before as a representative of the Natural High team at Brouwersdam, so maybe give us a brief update what you're doing now.
Yeah, I swapped from job. I started my own business in a foil school to offer a wide variety of foil sports. So mainly we're teaching wing surfing or wing foiling. Once in a while kite foil, and I offer foil surfing classes, but there hasn't been that many requests. And a few, I work together with a wakeboard school where we offer some wake foil lessons, which is a really good in-between exercise to get going for every other foil sport. So until now, it's a new adventure, which I really like. And more time on the water, more time on the beach, less working inside.
Yeah.
So far, a good 2021, I must say.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
And why foiling? Why did you not call it Wingfoil School, or why is it is it because you're that kind of waterman who wants to do it all and teach it all, or what's the reason behind that?
Well, because the wing surfing or wing foiling was still quite new, some people just kind of warned me a bit oh, maybe you're too early to step into this game. And I was really sure that I wasn't too early. I was just right on time. But to spread my chances, I was like, all right, I know that 95% of my lessons are going to be wing foil lessons, but just to fill up all the gaps or the holes in my agenda, I want to offer other sports as well, because when you do have the foil already, you can teach something else as well. Because I do have kites, for example, and my smallest, if I had to, my smallest wing foil wings are able to be able to use for kite foiling. I don't do that, but it works. And I must say now that when the summertime comes and it gets warmer, more people request kite foiling lessons. Actually, I've been doing more kite foil lessons this week than wing foil, but for next week it's different again. But in the end, it's still nice to have the change around, because when you teach every day the same thing, then it could get a bit boring. But so far it's nice. Few days was that busy that a few friends helped me out with lessons. So yeah, man, good journey.
Nice.
Yeah, happy with it.
So one topic that we have to address today is, as I do the podcast, sometimes I get messages from people that that I don't know. So that's new for me, like because usually on Instagram or Facebook, I already got messages from people that I already know. So now sometimes, and I really enjoy this, people are hitting me up like, hey, I want to learn wing foiling. What would you recommend for beginner gear, or where can I learn it and stuff? And if someone is living in the southwest of Germany, I tend to send them to Brauersdamm because I think it's a great location and it's close by. So if you are living in Cologne or somewhere around this area, or maybe also Frankfurt, but the area where I'm coming from, it's super cool because you can reach it in 4 or 5 hours by car. And then I said, hey, one of my friends, Jelle, he's also in the podcast. He started a school, and he was like, wasn't that the guy who teached Annaluz Lammerts and he just throw her the board? so maybe we have to point out that this is because Annaluz is a professional, and you probably thought that you don't have to teach her, but maybe you can make your own case in that point.
Yeah, the throw the board. Can't remember that well, actually. Too long ago. I do remember that she has been swimming quite a lot that session. But yeah, how did it end up? I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I had to go to work as well. I was short on time or something. It's like, oh, let's just take my set and just go practice, and then she just figured it out herself. But I must say that I'm actually quite surprised about, like, a lot of everywhere where you read on the internet, they mention like, oh, you take 20 to 40 liters above your own weight as the volume for your board, it will work. That's complete bullshit. It doesn't work at all. I actually,
thank you.
Guy who taught last year in Natural High, I went to him like, I do understand now why you don't like to teach wingsurfing or wingfoiling, because the biggest board you had is 140 liters.
Yeah,
it doesn't work at all. When someone can't windsurf, he's not gonna balance on the board. It's not gonna happen. So, like, a lot of people think that it's easy to learn wingfoiling, but when you are happy that you learn it in 20 sessions, just walking down the beach yourself, all right. But if you take 2 lessons, and the first lesson is just on the SUP, like a 10-6 with 300 liters, you learn in the first 2 hours, or in the first 15 minutes that you're on the water, you learn how to ride upwind instead of just going full gas downwind. What will happen when you go out for the first time on a wingboard? But everyone has their own opinion. But we've learned quite a lot in the last lessons how to just, in the last few months, how to teach more step by step and not really rush through it. Because if I look to myself, I learned it quite quickly. But other people just need a bit more time. You need to have the correct conditions. Super flat water works fine as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man.
And then thanks for mentioning that, because I really felt like every pro, like a lot of the team riders, the pros, and people follow the pros, obviously, they mention this every time, and they also recommend pretty small foils for beginners. And I kind of get it, what they're thinking, because they're thinking, if you buy one gear, you want to use it for at least 1 or 2 years. But where I feel that this is wrong is a regular person doesn't have all the pre-experience that a pro has from kite surfing and windsurfing and everything that they do. And a regular person doesn't have 100 days a year on the water, or 150. A regular person has maybe 20. So this, even if you buy something bigger, it's gonna last you 2 years, but no one wants to hear it. And I talk to so many guys who want to buy a 100-liter board, and they're maybe 75 kilos. And I say, hey, you can do this, of course, if you don't want to have fun, if you want to have a really, really flat learning curve, please go ahead, do it. But if you want to listen to me, take a big board, at least 140 liters. You'll have way much more fun in the beginning.
For sure. Yeah. At least.
Or take some lessons, rent something big, and then step down slowly, and then buy something that is smaller, but you already had your first weeks or something like that.
Yeah, it's just surprisingly like how many difficulties people run into when they have to balance on a 140 or 185 liter board, and then learn how to handle the wing in the correct position, not to have it too much up and in front of the nose that they only drift downwind.
Yeah.
But it's and some just pick it up really quick. That's cool as well. But I think in general, people do advise to take sets that are too small or boards that are too small. For example, the I think the set that has been sold the most for the hardtop in the shop where I worked previously is a 110 liter board. Yeah, for most it's too small, especially when you're not able to go on the foil after the first lesson, after the lessons. Then you can buy bigger. But hey, that's something for them and for people that want to start.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing that we're mentioning is it's that we both want people to have fun with this cool sport and not be disappointed and frustrated and as you said, like I mean, I've been riding now on my board. It's 105 liters for quite some time, and I felt like, hey, maybe I should get a smaller board. And I tested a 79 liters, and because it was a light wind day, I was riding. Oh no, I even was on the 120 Rocket Air that I have as a test setup, and I was riding in low wind, maybe 8 to 12 knots, and I had a blast, and I was for 2 hours straight on the foil, and it was a cool session. And then I thought, hey, I need to try the smaller board, and I took the same wing, the same foil. I put it on the smaller board, and I was in the water half of the time. I had no fun. It was just struggle. So I went back and I thought, oh, the wind probably dropped. I felt like the wind had dropped. And then I said, okay, let's try it one more time with a big board. And I went out and I was 1 hour on the foil again. And I thought, like, yeah, man, it's like, I will not sell my 105 the 105 is basically comparable to the 120 that I was on. I was on. I'm not going to sell it because I still need it for the light wind days here on the lake.
Sure.
Why should I sell it? It just makes my life more miserable to go on a smaller board.
You only start really starting to feel the difference that you need to have a smaller board when you want to do a lot of maneuvers like turns, 360s, whatsoever, or riding in waves where you need to pump and steer a lot. Then the advantage of the small board really comes to life. But if you want to ride as much as possible, just take a bit of a bigger board. There's a friend of me recently started as well, and he really sticks to his 125 inflatable board until he really can do both sides, jibes and tacks, and then he might go to a smaller board. But he's like, oh, I want to get the basics done properly. Even when I can already ride a smaller board, I don't want to, because I want to have the basics fixed.
Yeah. All right. Nice. So now let's talk about smaller boards, because we want to talk about dock starts.
Yes.
and that's also gonna be a proof that you're a really cool and thoughtful teacher, because it's a part of the foil game. So dock starting is part of the foil game. There's not so much information out there how to do it. I try to do it on my self-teaching method. I didn't figure it out, so I consider myself a fast learner. So I would say I just missed something, and there's probably a lot of people out there who maybe want to give it a try, who also maybe didn't dare to do it right now, or tried it 1 or 2 times and really felt like we're going nowhere with it. So let's talk about that. So maybe let's start with, why is dock starting even something that is cool, or that helps, or that is fun? Maybe, yeah. So I have my point of view on that, but I would be interested in your thoughts. So why dock starting?
For me, it's a good pumping exercise for a combination of wingfoiling and surf foiling. On the other side, it's a great physical exercise, because you can go as far as possible with the pumping. So it's a good exercise for your legs, for the balance on the board, and just to do something in between that there is waves or wind. I prefer to do it when it's nice and warm and not too windy, because when you have to wait on the dock with your friends to have your turn again, then it gets a bit chilly. But to do it for 20 minutes, half an hour, it's a lot of fun. But it's difficult. It can be you can get really annoyed in your first few sessions when you struggle to get on the board, or just pump the board all the time down. And there is a few things that you can do, or that I've figured out to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And to have a bigger chance of success.
Nice. And that's what we want to talk about. So before we dive into the technique, I think we should cover is probably the gear and maybe also the place. Like there's a saying, like the separation is in the preparation. So this podcast should be part of the preparation. And
Sure.
so what gear do I need for dog starts? Because I tried it with different foils that I had at hand. And I posted some of the fails that I had on Instagram, and there was a couple of guys pointing out to me that this is not the right foil. You could maybe use that if you're already good at dog starting, but it's not the right foil to learn. So what do I need? What should I watch out for?
Well, to start, take a big wing, or a big foil. I would say, for example, the gear I ride is from F1. So then I would minimum take the Phantom 1480, but maybe even the 1780, because there's a lot of glide before it drops back to the water. It needs to go really, really slow. The only disadvantage of a wider, more high aspect front wing is that you can go straight, but it's really hard to turn again. So to just make a turn and go back to the dock where you started. And
so, but I guess at the beginning, turning is not the focus point. It's getting started.
That's correct. So you want like a big foil where there's a lot of glide and just keeps on going on a really low speed as well. And then the board is quite important, because I actually prefer to do it on a board that is as small as possible. So like a kite foil board or my prone surfboard, because they're way thinner and shorter than most wing boards. And first of all, the grip position on the smaller board is smaller. So the chance of not standing correctly on your board is smaller again. And for example, on most kite foil boards, it's super thin. So that means that you're really direct contact with your foil, so that every pump that you make is efficient and gets through, because a wing foil board is slightly bigger. So mostly I take my 4-2, so like a really short board, but then I kind of know, all right, my front foot needs to be in the middle of my front pad. And since I have my foil a little bit more moved forward compared to when I surf foil or wing surf, I know, okay, my front foot, or my back foot, I want to have it on my foil, so it needs to be positioned at the end part of my tail pad. And then I know, okay, I'm standing correctly on there. And that's really important, because when you're just 2 centimeters out of the correct stance, it already feels weird to pump. So that's gear. Small board, big wing.
Small board, big foil, yeah. How long should the mast be?
I always ride 75.
Okay.
I wouldn't go over 75, because I think it gets unstable. So 65 or 75. I think when you go smaller than 65, you lose a bit of your pumping power, because there's not that much board which can go out of the water. So those are the basic principles for the gear, but a small board works actually the best. Then you need to have a proper dock, which is actually quite low to the ground. And it should be, it's easiest when it's a floating one. So not with the big poles on the side, because then you need to watch out that the front wing doesn't hit the pole or the end part. And the nice thing, when you have a floating dock, you can walk in a straight line next to the dock, and you can have the board like really close to the dock without hitting with the front wing to the dock or to something that's underneath the water surface.
Yeah.
So like, and preferably you want to start with your face in direction of the water so that you jump front side on there. So if you want to practice with a few friends and you have regular and goofy riders, you need to have enough space around you to go to be able to start in both directions. And
maybe one thought on the dock, something that I figured out to find low docks, because they are like the regular boat dock didn't work for me because it was just too high above the water. But at least in Germany, I don't know about other areas, but at least in Germany, a rowing club where people's gonna ditch their rowing boats into the water is normally pretty low over the water. That's at least what I found out. So every place where you find rowers going heading into the lake or river or whatever, that worked pretty good for me, and it's easy to Google it on Google Maps. So you can find out some spots that maybe you don't know yet.
Here around outdoor we have 2 places, 2 really nice floating ones, and they're squared, so you could actually start with 4 people at the same time, so 2 regular, 2 goofies. And those are super nice actually. The only thing is that when you walk too fast, the floating ones they just move a little bit. But since when you know how to get on the board, you don't need that much speed anymore. The more you progress, the less steps you can take, or like less steps with running before you get on the board. So to start off, when we're still on the land, we need the correct gear, small board, big front wing, and a dock with enough space around you, with which preferably is floating, because it's a bit annoying when you need to angle the board away from the dock when you start. You want to have a start that is as clean as possible. Because, for example, you mentioned your Instagram fails, I've seen them as well. I've seen a few times that when you get on the board, that the deck is not flat above the water surface anymore. It's slightly angled. And what happens then is that you directly want to go into a turn. And then it's really hard to keep it going, you know? So when you can run, when the dock is completely free below the surface, you can just run straight next to the dock, get into the end, get onto your board, and you can pump in a straight way and continue doing this.
Okay, cool. So anything else in the preparation, like we covered gear, we covered docks and places. Water depth is obviously a thing, but if it's deep enough for a foil, you should be fine. Or is there anything else?
I always take minimum over waist deep, because then I know even that when I push the foil down on accident, that it doesn't hit the bottom. Or when you crash forward, you don't want to hit the bottom. So minimum waist deep. And I would, for the first few times, wear a wetsuit or surf booties, because you can crash really weird next to your foil, on the foil. When you wear a wetsuit or something else, you are slightly protected. Or just when it's summer days, wear an impact vest, because you do fall from something quite high. And you can, like when you crash sideways or something, it's not the nicest crash actually. But those would be my preparations actually.
Nice.
And then because that's the funny thing, because when you requested to do something like this, or just give some extra information about dock starts, we were just about to get super warm, so we didn't surf or wing too much. So we were recently dog starting, and then we were like, should we do a podcast about dog start? So I just watched a few videos myself as well. And since I watched it, I tried to do it in a different way as well. So I actually learned how to do a more solid dog start in the preparation for this podcast. And
Nice.
this was actually the way that the friend was already doing last year, but I was like, no, it doesn't look that easy. I just want to just jump on it and just start pumping as hard as possible till it's on that flow level, and then just starts to relax. But he used it he did it a different way, and I've seen a few videos on YouTube where they kind of did this as well. And but in my opinion, this way the board stays more relaxed, and the chance of getting with a flat deck above the water surface on the board is bigger. And most importantly, in this way of starting, you let the foil glide more instead of that when you jump on it, you directly want to pump, and what will happen is that you push the nose of the board down to the water surface and you lose all your speed.
Yeah.
So what this friend of me was doing already, and what I figured out myself, was so that I would hold the board with the front hand in the direction or on the position where my front feet would stand, so on the backside edge, and my backhand on the front side edge, quite closely to the position where I put my back foot. Then I kept on running. Before I would push the board forward and jump on there, but now I just step on the board while I'm still holding the rails of my board. And in that moment, I have a second that the foil keeps on gliding while I stand up. And in that critical second, you let the foil glide, you stand up, and then you make a slight pump. And this way, it's way easier to hold the board balanced, so that the deck doesn't angle, so that it doesn't steer in the direction of the dog or doesn't steer to the other side. And it was for me, like, with flexibility, it's a bit, I had to figure it a little bit out, because you have to hold your hands on the board and step on the board as well. But since you still hold the board, it's way more balanced when you get on there, because when you push it forward and you jump, it can go in every direction. So the chances of a solid controlled start were way better this way. But like, it worked for me quite well. And then we tried it with friends, and they progressed like super quickly doing that way.
Nice. So maybe one thing that we forgot in the preparation is, like, what skill level do I need? And obviously you should be a proper foiler if you want to do dog starts. You should know how to use a foil, and you should know how to pump a foil.
Sure.
Yeah, and now let's go through the whole thing. So I'm a regular. So I have my board on my right side. I'm on the dock. I'm on the right. I'm facing the waterfront, so I can run to my left.
Yes.
And I grab my small board and I put my right hand to the rear, to the front side edge of the rear, and my left hand to a toe side of the tail, and my left hand to the heel side of the nose.
Yes, correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then I start. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, important that your backhand is quite not too much in the middle of the board, but really in the middle or at the end of your tail pad, because then you have more place to step on the board. Then it's really important to, because since we're aiming for a low dog, that the front wing or your plane of the foil is just below the water surface, not too deep, just underneath the water surface. And the deck of the board needs to be flat, so not angled. But
so flat in all angles, not no front and backside angle, no side angle.
So flat, not like this or like that.
Yeah.
And to make sure that the deck of the board stays flatter, you have to make sure that your body weight when you run is already on the board and not on the dock.
Aha.
Because when you start running with your body weight above your board,
Yeah.
the board still has already a little bit of pressure or weight on it, and it will stay balanced. So then you do 3-4 steps,
Shit.
with the
Yeah,
last step, you push yourself onto your board, and
yeah.
with that way you can make sure that the board stays in a better angle.
That was one of the mistakes that I've been doing, that I had not my body weight on the board, and when I started running, the board came up, I had to push it down, and it felt kind of weird.
Yeah. Those are the
Nice.
first few steps. Correct positioning of the hands.
Yes.
Then running with the board flat, body weight above your board.
Yeah.
So
one question.
Jump, but you step on the board.
Yeah, let's come to the step on a little bit later. But one more question that I have in mind is, when I'm on a floating dock, there is some parts of the dock below the surface, because otherwise the dock wouldn't float. So that's like just physics. So when I try to have my foil below the surface as much as possible and the mast as close as possible to the dock, it has to be somewhere under the dock, right? So we're talking like, I don't know, 10, 15 centimeters below the surface?
Something like this, yeah, as low.
Okay. So it's not that I'm close to getting my foil out of the water. It's more like the usual height that you would still be comfortable riding when you're foiling.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. Because, but like a lot of people, they aim to have the foil too much on the water. So then when you step or jump on it, you don't have that much leverage to pump again. Because you only have, 50% or only 40% of your foil, which is still up, or the mast which is still above the water. It's depending from dock to dock for sure, but when possible, try to have the plane as close as possible to the water surface.
Nice. Okay. So we have everything for the run start figured out, and now you already said a couple of times step on your board, and you didn't say jump on your board. So what's the reason for that one? How do I do that?
Well, but when I did the jump start, I just run, push the foil forward, and then I jumped on it. But now I just hold the foil or the board, as we mentioned before, start running. Then when I'm at the end of the dock, I try to get my back foot on the board first, and then my front foot. Because when I step on with my back foot first, I have my weight on the foil. And when I would stand up or step up the board with my front foot first, I have all the weight in front of the foil. So what will happen? The board will go down.
Yeah.
And when you step on with the back foot first, you let the foil do its work, and it keeps on gliding. And you don't pump it to the water surface where it sticks, and you can't get it off again.
Yeah. So you step on with your back foot. You then probably in a not jumping motion, but in a pretty fast motion, you step on with your front foot.
Yeah, it goes quickly behind each other, that's for sure. But I try to jump as less as possible, just to step on the board, because it's a more controlled way, and the board is flatter and in a better angle to just keep on gliding, because that's next to dock starting, when you need to be able to, what we mentioned before, that you can pump while riding on the wing or with the surfboard or over the kite, because you're not, you can improve with pumping technique from the dock, but you're not gonna learn it when you can't do it, because you need to feel your foil. And when you're riding with the kite or the wing or whatsoever, you can recover yourself when you're out of the correct pumping rhythm. And that's what you see as well a lot of times when people are riding on a chop or on a wave. that they just don't feel their foil. They don't let the foil glide and let the foil do its work. Because when you don't pump in the correct rhythm, it's not going to increase in speed. It's just going to decrease. And that's what's a common mistake with dog starting as well. That people are like, I need to gain speed. I need to accelerate. And then they start pushing just with their front foot. But there's not that much going to happen when you just push the front foot down, because you only pitch the nose of the board towards the water. Because you push way more from your back foot in a relaxed way. Like you push and let it glide. Push and let it glide. And then
so
and that's the bigger the foil as well. But the longer the fuselage is, the more relaxed you can pump. Just up and down. And that's why the big foil is easier to start off with.
So one question that I have in mind is, how fast do you run when you do the dog start?
The smaller the foil is, the faster I need to run. For example, when I would take the big foil, which I actually don't own, but then it's just 2 steps, tuck tuck, and it keeps on gliding. But then we're speaking about a 1780, so that's really huge. I think that
so it's a 1780 high aspect. I think that's important to manage.
Yeah.
Because for low aspect, you would take a 2400 or so, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
But
they're still actually quite. They're not compared to the other ones. They're still quite medium. I think there's easier foils to pump than the Phantom line, but like more flat, like the signatures or unifoils. But still, those work again better for turning. So, but indeed, the bigger the front wing, the easier it will get to dog start. But now we mostly do it with the foils that we use for surf foil. So 1280 or 1080, something like that. But then you need to run it a little bit faster. But to have great success the first few times, you do want to run, even with a really big wing, a little bit faster. Because then your moment from stepping on the board while holding the rail still to get up, you can extend that moment. Because when you have such a big foil, like above 2000, it won't drop automatically. Because you push it, you run, you push it forward, try to keep it on the same height, step on it, glide, push yourself up, and then you pump. And when you jump on it, out of nowhere, the weight comes on, and your complete set, it drops underneath the water surface. So then you really need to put a lot of effort in it to get it up and going again.
Yeah.
So in general, first few times, take as much speed as you can handle. Too fast, you get out of balance. But too slow, it doesn't work. Because you see this quite often, and people they do their first 3 steps like really fast, and then the last 2 they're like slowing down, and then they step on the board and it drops. But it's a scary thing to practice, because when you're not correctly on the board, it can go in every direction, and you can quickly get into a weird situation with your foil.
And also with the dog, right? I mean, if you fall in the direction of the dog, it's probably good to wear a helmet and protect yourself.
Yes, sure. And that's why it's nice to let the foil glide and hold the rails, and not jump on it and directly start pumping, because then you're still that close to the dog. So I think with that, with a quite of a big wing, and you get on the board like this, it's not gonna drop without pumping in the first 5 meters. It will just glide.
Yeah. Okay, so how do I find out the right speed for pumping my foil? What's the easiest way
to figure that out?
Yeah.
Well, in general, the bigger your foil, with the longer fuselage, your foil rhythm will always be a lot slower. Because it's a big and tall foil. So that's hard to explain actually. This because
so can I? But can I, for instance, like, can I figure it out during wingfoiling, or like,
yes.
what's your recommendation?
With wingfoiling, it's really easy to feel it because you can just keep the wing above your head in a flat position. It is less or almost no power in there, and then you can let the foil pump and especially let it glide, because that's what what I mentioned to a lot of friends as well. Stop pumping when you don't need to pump, because it's not going to drop the foil when it has its speed. Especially when we're riding with the wing, when it's windy, the wind will push us forward out of our back, so it will keep on gliding.
Yeah. There was one of my main takeaways for wingfoil pumping also, that I think Keawi mentioned it in the Progression Project podcast, that he said most people are pumping too fast, too early, and they're not using the glide of their foil. And I had that in my mind. And when I'm now wingfoil pumping, as soon as I'm above the water, I let my foil at least glide a little bit, then pump again, and I constantly have to say to myself, don't pump too much, and use the foil, because it's, as you said, I'm just wasting energy and I'm not gaining speed when I pump too much.
Yeah, man, because that's the thing. When you start with the big foils that we mentioned before, then you do more like a heavy long pump, and the smaller your front wing gets with a shorter fuselage, the more you do like a less heavy but a shorter behind each other pump. It's a different rhythm, but you should really let your foil like flow. It's like 1, 2.
Yeah.
Because when you start pumping too quickly behind each other in a row, you get out of breath quicker when your condition is not that good, and you just want to extend it as long as possible, because the longer you can stay on your foil, the more exhausted your body will get. So then you want to still have that extra power to just be like, okay, I want to make the last 20 meters back to the dock, but I'm getting out of my rhythm, but I still have a bit of energy in my body. And then you need to have the power to keep on pumping quicker behind each other to make it back. So first start relaxed, and when you feel like, okay, now I'm slowing down, then you try to pick the speed up again.
Okay, got it. So next time I'm going to be wingfoiling in light wind conditions, I'm going to try to figure out my pumping rhythm better, and probably like also count in my head a little bit, like 1, 2, 3, maybe something like that, to really have the rhythm in my mind when I practice the dock starts.
Yep. Because this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is something what comes back in the wingfoil class as well. Because what most people do when they get on the foil, they directly want to ride upwind. Then the foil doesn't work. You just need to let it glide downwind for a few seconds. And that's the same with the dock. You have speed, your foil glides, step on, and then you start pumping again. But it's really hard. Like, especially when you have to figure out the way to get on the board. Some sessions you do like 50 starts, and you manage to go 3 or 4 times just for 5 to 10 meters. And then you have a good session, and you're like, every time you get on the board, you're like 100 meters away. So, but it can be
even for you, even you're experienced, you still have these kind of sessions, or?
Well, the first session after the winter break, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, what's going on here? I had like 30 starts, and 3 of them I was like happy with it because I made it out of the harbor and back, and the other ones I just or fell off the board or didn't had the board angled that well. And then later on, because you requested for this podcast, I was like, I need to get into it. And then I just figured out the different way of starting, like stepping on the board. So then it's way more solid.
Nice. So that's good news actually, because I also felt like it's pretty hard to learn it, because as I said in the beginning, I consider myself a fast learner. I normally pick up movements pretty fast. I learned kite foiling pretty fast, and I thought, like, this dog starting is not as easy as it looks. It's really something that you have to wrap your head around and really practice a lot, and still challenging.
Oh, 100%.
Nice.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, it can be so frustrated. You can get so frustrated from this sport, but in the end, it's a cool feeling because you can get
Yeah.
so exhausted after a good dog starting session, like that your legs
Nice.
are just burning. Like sometimes where where I was done, and then there is this surf center on the inside on the lake.
Yeah.
And they have this
Yeah.
perfect floating dock, and it's in a small kind of little harbor. So
Yeah.
but I rent out the boats, and then you can just start with this from the dock, and you can pump onto the Grevelingen, so like into the sailing
Yeah.
area, and then
Yeah.
you could, when there's a little bit of wind on your back, like, okay, I want to reach the green or the red buoy, and then you can set a target for yourself. You're not gonna make it back because it's way too far. You need to swim back, so then you have two trainings: swimming and pumping. But it's a cool spot to practice.
Yeah, and it's great workout. I mean, also like paddling back is a good practice for surf foiling and for surfing, and I really like that. What I don't like is that I can't do it so far yet.
Well,
So yeah, so maybe to for the end of this podcast, maybe do you have any recommendations what I or someone else could practice like beforehand, like for every maneuver you can normally you can break it down somehow and deconstruct it into 2 or 3 parts and say, okay, I'm going to practice this part and I'm going to practice that part. And what are your recommendations?
because I do know that your foot position on the board is really important.
Yeah.
So if you could somehow, or with kite foiling, or with windsurfing, figure out
Or
what
wake foiling behind a
or
boat.
wake foiling,
Yeah.
what the correct foot position would be, then you can maybe make signs or a mark on your dog start board, like, okay, here I really need to stand, because then you can aim for that, because there's so many things happening at the same time. You don't want to hit the dog yourself or with your board. So then a common mistake is to not stand correctly on your board. So you can figure that out with different water sports. And then, like, just the way to step on it and let the foil glide, that is really important. And you can, that glide moment you can really feel with wing foiling. So you can ride, all right, not from powered weight, like sideways, but to have the wing above your head and just feel how the foil will float and glide. And on the other hand, you just need to make 100 or 1,000 starts to be successful, because it really is difficult, and just you need to be exactly correctly on the board. I have it as well, like when I'm 2 centimeters too much forward with my front foot, it already feels weird to pump. Luckily, I can now manage to swap or just change around my setting even when I'm trying to get on the board. But that is what took me the most amount of time, is to get on there too much forward with both my feet. The position comes so precise. So if you could mark that off on the board, that will be a good thing.
Yeah, that's something I used my dog start board. It's actually a smaller prone foil board, and it's also I also use it for wake foiling sometimes. And when I was wake foiling, I figured out like this was the first session that I had since last fall, and I felt like, oh yeah, when I started the first time, my feet were completely on the wrong spots. and I thought it's right, but I couldn't remember it somehow. And then when I'm wakefoiling, I can also like I have enough time to reposition them during the start process. But if I would have been the first time wakefoiling, would have been I would not have been able to make the start. You know, it was just like it felt like the whole thing is it felt completely wrong. So yeah, that's something that I really have to figure out. And one thing that you mentioned is that you put your foil a little bit more to the front for dog starting.
Yeah.
Does that change your feet position, or do you still keep the same feet position like compared to wake foiling or kite foiling on the board then?
Well, like when you move your foil slightly forward, you do aim to have your front foot a little bit more on the end part of your tail pad, so that it's really above the mast.
The rear foot, because you just said front foot. Okay, the rear foot, at the front end of the tail pad. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Because then,
so not on the kick tail, a little bit more to the front.
No, a little bit more to the front when you move your foil forward in the track box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Those are the most important things to start doing dog starts, or just to be successful, I think.
Got it.
But still, you need to have a lot of tries.
Yeah. All right, man. That's not good news. I will. Unfortunately, I just lost the foil that I would have been practicing with. As you know, I destroyed the Phantom high aspect during my last session on Monday. But I will find another foil. Let's see.
Sure.
Yeah. Any to wrap that whole thing up. Any recommendations from your side on foil brands? Like that would be something that I would be really interested in. I mean, obviously you are close to F1 and they have awesome foils. I mean, I also tested some of them, so I really think they're great foils. But what else do you think is good on the market? Like any other brands that you see, like this is very, very good stuff, and maybe also something. So what I'm looking for is also something where I can easily swap my foil with maybe, you know, like as little parts as possible between like multiple sports, you know, like wake foiling, wing foiling. Maybe I also want to get into surf foiling, maybe some dog starts. So you need a lot of gear to cover all this shit. So
well, but I would really like to try. There will be that new, what is it? The new Unifoil Viper. That one looks really cool, and I think it's a Viper they call it. I'll check it quickly. Yeah, the Viper. They have it in smaller wings, and it's not that high aspect anymore, so it's a little bit more curved, so better for turns. I think Signature has kind of a same one, or like a bit familiar with how do you call this thing again? The let me think. Yeah, it's the Viper from Unifoil. And the new ones from Takuma, they look razor sharp as well. I heard some good things about them. But with this COVID, it's really hard to get your hands on some parts. Recently I saw on the beach, I saw the new connection from Armstrong with I think they call this the A+ system, and it looks super rigid, because that's a big problem, I think, with some of or not a big problem, where they can improve is the torsion flex on the mast to the fuselage connection. A lot of the brands have a lot of movement in there, and what I've seen from Armstrong, they made something different again, and it felt really rigid and stiff, and that's what you want. You don't want too much flexibility. So that's the new Unifoil Viper I would like to try. It looks amazing. Or like the guys who just ride with it on the Instagram videos are just insanely good. And I have this the game changer from Signature. I would really like to try that one, but it's all a bit harder to get your hands on in the Netherlands. Because they're all they're so a niche brand, specifically for a bit for weighing, but more for surf foiling. But I think those would be on my list to try.
I think Willow, who was also on the podcast, I think in episode 6 or something like that, Willow River Tonking, he's riding Unifoil and he's pretty happy with it. And I just opened the website and he's on the front page of the website. So yes. Maybe we can ask him if he can send us something.
Yeah.
And then the guys from the Wingfoil school in Fehmarn are also connected with Signature Foils. So maybe they have some pointers. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I just don't know where I could try them in the Netherlands. Yeah, I've seen a few guys with them on it, but on the other hand, I don't really want to spend 2K on a foil or something just to have something extra.
Yeah, totally.
I do have enough stuff already at home. But they look quite interesting, and maybe they don't even perform that much better than the foils there right now. But those are for me, eye openers. Oh wow, those shapes look nice, and that connection from Armstrong looks super solid. Because that's where a lot of brands can still improve. So
yeah. I mean, I'm running out of gear right now because I destroyed one foil and I sold my own foil, and so I really need to get something. So now I'm faced with what everybody is faced with. It's really hard to get something, and it's not actually, the question is not what I would like to buy. The question is what someone has in stock, more or less.
Well, I think at Natural High they recently got a few Phantoms again, the 1280 as well, which is really nice. A little bit faster than the 1480 and a bit more agile with turning and stuff because it's less span. That one I really liked back in the days. It's a nice fast foil, especially with an extra short fuselage. It turns super short, but it pumps nice as well.
Nice.
There's more than that.
Yeah, and would it be suitable to have the 1200? How much is it? 1250. And then the big one as well, for the light wind days, the 1700 high aspect.
That would be a good combination, especially for the lakes where you're about 1280, 7080. For me, my set is a 940 and a 1280 when I'm riding here, because we have more wind and I like to go fast on the foil as well. But maybe you even want to go smaller when it's possible. But
nice. Thanks, man, for all the info. So we covered dog starting pretty good, I guess. So maybe for everybody who's listening to us or watching us on YouTube, if you have tips and tricks, please write it in the comments. Especially on YouTube, you can write some comments. If you're on the podcast, send us Instagram or post it on Instagram. Tag us, link us in your story, whatever. We will be thrilled to learn something new. I mean, Jelle is pretty deep into the foiling game, but we can all learn new tricks. Pretty stoked if we get some new info as well.
Yeah.
So nice. Jelle, thank you very much. Enjoy your lessons today. Enjoy your own session today. You already said you have some wind coming up at Brouwersdam today. We have nothing, but we had some good days on the weekend, so I'm also pretty happy about that.
Thanks for having me again. Hope to see you
soon.
And,
and when I have the chance to practice what we learned today, and if I have some new foils, I'll post it and I'll tag you, and you can comment it.
Sure,
whatever it is.
I'll give some tips and tricks. All good.
Nice. Thank you, man. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys, that was Jelle Stoop on dog starts and also on how he schools people. And if you like what Jelle does, check him out, foilschool Netherlands. And Jelle is very, very knowledgeable in everything he does. Apart from that, we have some super cool Wingfoil interviews coming up and also some big names. I can't pronounce and release the the guests yet, but I'm really stoked about it. Next episode, we get a special episode again about e-foiling and how you can actually build your own electric battery pack powered e-foil. That's something that I want to do actually, because I think wingfoiling is the best foiling discipline that I've discovered so far, but you always need the wind, and I want to have an e-foil for myself to be able to ride and to foil whenever I want. And also I really like the idea that e-foiling is super easy to learn and that you can just focus on one skill at a time and help people to get into winging easier, because once they master the foil, that's the only thing that is really a little bit difficile, a little bit complicated about wingfoiling. And once they can master the foil by themselves with an e-foil, for instance, they can actually easily progress into wingfoiling. And that's something that I'm super stoked about, to bring people into wingfoiling, because I love it so much. If you like this episode, as always, please share it with your friends, leave a comment, leave a like, leave a review wherever you are on every platform, or everything counts and everything really helps the podcast. And you can be a part of that community and help me out. As always, look at your forecast. If you see some wind coming, go wing it!